How we doing? All right. Where are we going today? Are we going recruiting first? I think a pretty good day for us today. Obviously, in the a good start anyway to this signing class. With the early signing period, and we still got a bunch of work to do. But I think our coaches did a great job. Worked real hard, put this class together. I know our support staff, everybody. There are a lot of people that are involved in it, in recruiting, whether it's from us traveling, from organization to recruiting weekends. I think everybody really put an unbelievable effort, and you got to see that with some of the success we had today with this recruiting class. And, I know I always love, what do we think of the class? Well, unfortunately, you're going to get the same, right? If you haven't heard me before, you'll get the same answer I give just about every single year. Come ask me in two to 3 years, and I'll tell you if we had a good recruiting class or not. As these guys, bring in young guys, and we see where they are now and see how they develop throughout their career and see how successful that they are. So, also, a lot going on with the practice. We'll have one more practice tomorrow morning. Kind of wrap up. It'll be a helmets practice here as we wrap up our bowl prep here on campus. Guys will have a couple days off, and then we'll report Sunday night up to Atlanta for the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, and and then continue preparation with practice starting on Monday for that. So we've had a pretty good week of practice. I'm pleased with how our guys transitioned from kind of the pre-bowl practice, developmental practices back into game week practices, and so they've handled that pretty well. And it'll be hopefully we get it all set. But it's all of our first time together for a bowl game, so they're kind of learning what the schedule's all about, and hopefully they get used to this routine, and we go to a lot of great bowl games in years to come. Questions?
Dan, I guess when you're looking at the early signings, are there any positions you feel like you guys are pretty much done now with, or are there any that you want to share?
I don't ever say that, but I think there's I think it's a great start, and I think we strengthened a lot of certain areas with talent and depth for the future. And then there's other areas, that we still need to fill several spots. The main areas that I think we have to that we're going to look to focus on, and as we continue to the second signing is going to be is obviously going to be secondary and defensive line for us.
Hey, Dan, you signed 3 kids from Lakeland today.
Yeah.
How much did you use what happened in 07 as a recruiting pitch, or how often did you talk to those kids about that?
I mean, a little bit, because here's the thing is I was here to sign those kids, so I knew the situation. I know the players. And, they're guys that in high school, the 07 guys were guys that won back-to-back high school, state, and national championships. And then came to Florida and won a national championship. And it was great. The guys at Lakeland were able to win the state championship this year. So hopefully we can we continue that, and they help the opportunity to help lead us to a national championship in the future. And I think when you look at that, a lot of times they were guys that were young and growing up and looking up to, guys like Chris Rainey and the Pouncey brothers and Ahmad Black and all the success those guys have, and now they're carrying on the tradition to come here to Florida and hopefully they get the opportunity to win a national championship here as well.
There's always a ton of angst from fans about recruiting, irrational angst probably. But
hey, you know what? 3 years from now, it's either very rational or very irrational. So,
so what was your feeling about the way everything just came together in the end?
I don't know if there were a lot of surprises, to be honest with you, and that's kind of what you look for. I thought it was a pretty solid day. I still think. I still think there's additions we're going to make to this class. I think with the early signing, with the 2 signing days, I think everybody gets so excited today. Okay, how was the signing class? Where are you? Well, we're partially there. I mean, it's there's still going to be more additions to this recruiting class moving forward. So, but I don't know. I mean, the hardest one for me is I'll go back, and I remember sitting there, and there was a lot of, as you say, the angst with everybody. As I signed a recruiting class, and according to ranks, I think it was probably one of the lowest classes I signed in my career, and that was, had this quarterback no one had heard of, Dak Prescott. Had a running back, oh God, a 2-star running back, Josh Robinson. He's Preston. Who's this Preston Smith kid? He's like not the highly ranked kid on his high school team. And that's a group that went on to be the number one team in the country for half a season. And so a lot of NFL players, there's a bunch more I'm missing. Bernardrick McKinney, who's, a 2-star, who's this 2-star quarterback athlete kid. Because I think there are a lot of things in those guys that we saw that maybe weren't shown in high school or camps or in the star rankings. But, as we got to know them and knew how they would develop and how they would fit our program, would be more successful. So, I don't. We'll see. I'll be honest with you. I don't know whether our fans are happy or sad or excited or nervous or, and I'm sure I can get on my Twitter feed tonight and see a little bit or a lot of both. So we'll see.
By the same token, you talk about being such a competitor. I remember when Urban used to come in those first couple years, he'd be admittedly had been looking at the rankings like crazy and all that. Do you look at them and do you feel compelled to move up as high as you can go?
No, because I the hard one for me is I rank guys differently. I do look at the rankings because I know people pay attention to those things. We might have guys that are ranked higher than I would have ranked them, and we have guys that are probably ranked lower than I would have ranked them. And then, what's funny is it depends what website you go to. Depends how guys are ranked. And if you came into our staff room, we would probably rank them differently than the website. So, it's kind of a fictional thing, with players. Now, obviously, there's some that are easy, to figure out. This guy, the 3-play guys or 4-play guys are like, okay, that's not really hard to evaluate that this guy's a freak show. But a lot of the other ones are you got to really pay attention to what's going on and what your thoughts and where the development of them can come. Boy, go ahead. Did you just call it up? There you go. And there are some pretty good players. Dak I know is a big name because, I guess, heck, if you're a one-name athlete, you're a pretty big name. You say Dan. I know you all jumped right to me, but, there are some people that don't jump right to me that think that way.
This one's for you, Dan. The coaching carousel, obviously a big thing every year.
Yeah.
Not any turnover in the SEC, but when you look back at last year, how much different for you was this month of December when you're not having to hire a full set of coaches, move?
Totally different deal. I'm still moving because I'm still not in my house yet, but right. Tommy Waters working really hard to get me in there, so that's a good thing. This year is exhausting a little bit. Even though last year, because last year you come in and you're on adrenaline, but there's a lot of little things this year, especially bowl prep, practice, knowing dealing with all our players. That was probably a little different than last year, and so when you look last year over the course period, you're exhausted, and then all of a sudden Sunday hits when it goes quiet and there's no one around campus. Sunday hit this week, and we've been in the office till, I think I got to bed about 4 in the morning. I got to bed a little after 4 last night, and was in the office by 6:30 this morning. So, because you're doing both ends of it right there. So I think that's what's a little bit different.
Last year you signed 13 in the early window. You signed 20. People speculated that maybe in the second year of early signing they would kind of slow down a little bit. Do you see that for top teams that want to compete every year? They're going to be signing more often, full classes if they can in December?
I don't know. I'm interested to see. I would bet. I think what is it last year was 74%. Is that or 70? Right? It was almost about. I was 75. Say signed early nationally. I bet it's going to be in that same window this year. And is that sound? I don't know. How's it looked so far? Is it up a little bit
It's
more?
on track to be a little bit more if you look at 3-star and higher prospects. Last year, it was 66% of 3-star and higher prospects signed early. So now it's looking around 70, 75% of those.
Yeah, I just think I think people are getting used to it, and we'll see. It's still hard to say after year 2. I think you give it a couple years and see where it's all at. With opportunity. And see, I bet it'll always stay around that same number. I don't know that it'll ever go all the way up, but I bet it stays around that 75. I would bet 75% is about the number on an average year for overall. That most schools will sign 75% of the guys will sign early and 25% will sign on the second signing window.
11 offensive linemen in the last 2 years you signed. Do you feel like you've established kind of your line of the future, and how big a priority was that this year?
Well, it's huge. We lose a bunch this season of offensive linemen graduating, and so. But I think the foundation of a team is really at both lines of scrimmage. If you have a great foundation on the offensive and defensive lines, it's pretty easy to build the program around that. I think that's if you look at successful teams, they can control the line of scrimmage and control it on both sides of the ball. So you really have to have a great foundation on the offensive line.
And just how big priority? Obviously, you're losing a lot of guys, but even coming in last year and getting some guys and to have that many, I think you have 5 early enrollees coming in this year.
Yeah, on the offensive line. Yeah, because we're going to need some of them to play right away. And I think offensive line is one of those positions where there's guys that redshirt, and come in because and there's a lot of them that come in kind of want a redshirt, want to develop, and then just because of the nature of the position, But for us, if you look at where we're at, we're gonna need a couple of these guys on the field playing next year for us that just signed. So it's great. We're hoping to get most of them in early and get them going through spring, and also to replenish everything that we're going to lose on the offensive line.
You had the Lakeland kids. You said there wasn't much surprise today. You had the Lakeland kids on campus. What was your sense when they left their official visit last weekend, and you go into a quiet period? So where are your emotions? What are you thinking that they're leaning going into today?
I felt pretty good about it. One great thing for those guys, and guys enjoy the recruiting process. And the one thing I appreciate, I think it's fun, and I love guys to have a fun time with it. But I'm also, there's a serious aspect to it because it's, you're talking about people's futures, and you're talking about these young men, their lives. It's not a game; it's their future and their life, and it's going to have a huge impact. Where they go to school has a huge impact on the rest of their life, and so I really appreciate those guys. Those guys were nothing but straightforward with me ever since the beginning. Everything they talked about and said they were going to do, they did right from the beginning all the way through the end. Now, personally for them, did it ever waver and what was always going through their mind and how they were getting through everything? Possibly. But you know what? All I can go off of is from them is the conversations we had, and all through the process, they were pretty steady in how the whole thing played out from beginning to the end.
And then just from a recruiting standpoint, how important is to have that pipeline and to recruit that area with Lakeland?
Well, I think that whole, you look at the whole Central Florida area is major Gator country, and so for us to go down there and you look at the history and all the great players that have played here from, and not just Lakeland, that whole part of the state. There's a lot of tradition, a lot of great players that have been here, and that's really important for us to have to get the best players in the state of Florida from that area.
Dan, 10 early enrollees, how big is that?
Well, I think it helps. For those guys, I'm not one that pushes it on guys because I think it's a very personal decision. And a lot of the parents always ask me, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, what do you think? What are you looking to get out of this?" But the opportunity for these guys to come in, they get to go through an off season. They're going to get to go through spring practice. They're going to get a jump start in the classroom on progress towards their degree. So I think that helps, and it certainly helps as you go through spring, having depth and and repetitions for guys to get that work in the spring, and it helps jumpstart their career.
And Jalen Jones, what kind of prospect do you think he is?
You know what? Jalen's a guy I've known for quite a while. He's a very athletic, got great size. He's a guy that is always worked very hard of the discipline part of being a quarterback. And what I mean by the technique and fundamentals, and always improving himself. He's one of those guys that's kind of funny. He works hard to play the position. Technically at a high level, but he also has the athleticism and the skill to improvise and make plays on his own.
Coach, can you talk about Naquan Wright?
Naquan obviously is a guy that you get to see as a back. He has a great combination of power and speed, great quickness. In how he plays the game. You're not going to look at him and say, "Boy, this is a big power back," but he has the size to play physical. But he also has the make you miss and speed to be a dynamic player in the open field. And one of the great things I love about him, he came up to a camp and he wanted to play wide receiver and do one-on-ones. And you see that the competitive edge first off, but also the skill set he has to be able to catch the ball coming out of the backfield. And to be able to be a threat, not just running the ball, but as we use the tailbacks in the passing game.
And then the linebackers was probably one of the more highly recruited groups in this class. Can you talk about them?
Well, and there's inside backers and outside backers for us with how those guys play. But if you look at it, we have some older guys at that position. A couple of senior this year. But also next year, you're going to have a whole bunch of guys that are going to be walking out the door. And so we had to make sure that as those guys are leaving, as they become seniors, the next guys are ready to step in and have got a little year under their belt ready to go.
And you guys didn't sign any defensive tackles in the last class. You guys get Jalen Humphreys this year. He was coveted by pretty much everyone. How big was it to get his commitment and also hang on to him?
Well, it's huge because he's, like you said, he's a big physical, athletic guy on the defensive line. I think that's a big position that we're not finished recruiting at yet for us, but it is huge because, like I said, that's where you have to have a great foundation on. I think we brought in some guys, some athletic guys that can go rush the passer. Whether it be we have some of those, whether they be D end or outside backers, we have a couple of those. But it's the guys that can be big physical and athletic difference makers that can play inside and outside that we really need to build on in the future.
And then the linebacker talk you already hit on, Tyrone Hopper. You guys got on him really early, and he kind of blew up as his recruitment went on. How key was his commitment as well? And I know you guys had to hang on his pledge too.
It was big. He's a guy we identified early that has a lot of potential. He's a guy that's played corner and safety in high school, has great and linebacker. Played everywhere, has great length and athleticism, and I think he's a guy you're going to see as he gets here, his ability to grow. And and gets in our program, and now you have a guy that has length and all of a sudden puts on the size, but and is a linebacker that had corner cover skills in high school, and so that type of athleticism I think is what we want to have on our defense.
And then lastly, so much is made about the state of Florida and going to the powerhouses and getting those pipelines. But Georgia, you guys hit it last year. You guys have hit it this year. You go into Buford and get a player out of that powerhouse program. How key is being able to recruit the Peach State for you and your staff?
Well, it's big. One thing I always love, you really want to look at it. The rounded off number, you say 5 hours. Put a dot on campus and a 5 hour radius around campus. And I can extend to 6, I guess, but that really encompasses the entire state of Florida, Georgia. Alabama and even out in starting to touch on Mississippi and parts of Tennessee and South Carolina, and you get that radius of guys. That's where you're going to build. Now, we're going to recruit players and top players from all around the country, but, generally speaking, that's your local area, and that's where players are, it's easy for them to come to campus, easier for them to come visit. They can get in a car and drive. Parents can come watch the games and drive to all the games. I think, we're talking to these guys over the next 3 years, this freshman class. I think it's something like we played 25 of 36 games in the state of Florida in their first 3 years. So in that area, parents aren't having to travel all around the country to see their son play. So, in that area, I think there's a big plus. But, so it's important to be strong in your local area. And then you can go and recruit, the best national players outside of that area.
Going back to the interior defensive lineman, is there a certain number there that you're kind of looking for in the second period?
No, I don't ever put numbers on stuff because we're going to look at guys that we think fit our program. We're going to go after those guys, and I'm not going to put a number on it. And because if you say, hey, there's one, but the number is one, but there's two that we have the opportunity to get, we'll be really happy. And if you say the number is two and we only get one, I'm not going to force somebody that wouldn't fit our program just to fill a number. So what we do is you just kind of build around, and you're going to get guys that really fit your program. But that is a need for us.
Is there an advantage or a disadvantage to having, more people focusing on those last few prospects?
Well, I think one thing, and I do think there's a lot of prospects. I think if you look and you play one of these positions, and some of the guys that are waiting the second signing period are looking at where people went. Okay, so I think a lot of people, this school is telling me this, and all of a sudden, they said, I'm going to be this one guy, they're going to sign at that position, and all of a sudden today they signed 4 guys at that position. And I think as they look at it going forward, I would imagine a lot of the guys waiting to the second signing period are going to look at where they fit, where the depth chart is, how they fit in, what the opportunity to play, and what the need of the school is going to be. So I think that part of it makes it a little bit easier for us to focus our attention and for them to focus the attention on us and say, okay, coach, hey, I understand what you're saying now. Look at here's the need at your school. This is exactly where I fit in with every other prospect and how it's going to play out in the future.
I think each of the Lakeland kids might have mentioned the family atmosphere here is a big reason. Just how do you create that? And I mean, it can come off as like, oh yeah, of course, like it's kind of cliche. But how do you guys truly create that and go about that when you have recruits here and just to show it to them, portray it?
Well, it's one thing. I try. Hopefully, it's real. That's one that's important to me and guys within our program. I that's a big thing for me in hiring coaches, and as we put a staff together and things that we talk about, that we want you to treat players kind of like that you treat your own son. We want coaches' families around, wives around, the program as much as possible, and around not just recruiting, around all of our players on the team. And I think it's kind of how I've run the program. Megan's, that's how she knows how to run the program. She's around not just in recruiting, she's around the players. She's around all the time. And, but I tell them that a lot of it in the family program, we treat them like our own son. Means we're going to have really high expectations. We're not a family program. It's just all lovey-dovey. I don't know if you ever see me and Megan together after the game, you'd probably laugh. Guys come by. She'll be like, oh, my goodness, you did so amazing today. Give him a big hug. I'm like, he dropped a pass in the third quarter. Oh, and you did such a great job. I'm like, he jumped off sides. I'm like, I'm probably a lot more critical, and she's extremely loving. And but we're a pretty good team that way.
What do you think makes Christian Robinson such a good recruiter? Is it age? Is there something to it?
Well, I think one thing, he's worked, and he's as a young coach coming in here, it was one of the things in knowing about him that I spent a bunch of time with him on in coming in is one, asking a lot of questions, how to recruit, how to do it the right way, how to, especially young coaches, there's a lot that goes on out there that make sure be careful of putting yourself in a bad situation. And I think he's very intelligent. Very motivated. I think you see that as a position coach on the field. He does. He's got a huge future. But I think that what you're seeing is him grow and be able to handle those situations. And I think his maturity, he's a very mature young man, that he's able to handle the situation he gets put in. But he's also we all try to stay young with it and keep a young mindset. Whether you're wearing I wear my Jordans and all that. I try to keep a young mindset because you're around. I spend my life around 18 to 22-year-olds, and I think for him the ability is he can look at guys and he's played in this league. He's had success in this league, and that wasn't that long ago. So I think his ability to relate really helps as well with the players. I'm a huge Jamarcus Weston fan. What's his ranking? Okay, good. We'll see. I'm a big fan of his. He's a tremendous young man. I think he has great potential, great athleticism. He has great size, but most importantly, amazing character and work ethic for a young guy. You look at him academically, takes care of his business. You go down and how people talk about him around the school, how he's respected in the town of Clewiston is pretty special. How he handled the whole recruiting process, first class, in his image. If you want to. You look at what your brand is. He's got a first-class brand, and so I'm really happy to have him part of the family. And I think he's going to have he's got potential to have a pretty special career here at Florida. Well, Trent's a guy that everybody you talk to is like. He's an amazing athlete, not just, football, basketball. And, and when he gets to concentrate on one sport, I don't think he's probably ever lifted a weight in his life. And, he's going to get here and, when he gets on that training program, physically going to be a different guy because, he's got great size. He's got great athleticism. He played all over the field in football. He's a phenomenal basketball player. We got to see where he's going to end up playing for us. I have an idea where we're going to start him, but it's not even fair to label that right now for him because I want to see him as he starts going through workouts and as he grows and progresses. And so I think he's got a really bright future. And and you look at those guys. You look at Trent. You look at Jamarcus. They were committed before I got here. It shows, they want to be Gators. And, there's something about that when you have that extra pride in there and, and what it means to be a Gator. And that's, I think that's great to have within the program of guys that believe in that. And I think those are guys that end up being great leaders within, not just great playmakers and unbelievably talented guys. Those guys they end up having a little bit of leadership in them because, that's of what it means to put on that uniform and that helmet.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Yeah. See y'all in Atlanta.